everyone, Felicia here, and I'm ready to do another tutorial with you. Today we're going to learn 3 ways to do a watercolor background. So let's start with the 2-color ombre wash. I'll be using coral and emerald, the 2 colors that came in the Sword of the Spirit kit. Now you'll start with a very light and very wet brush. Here you can see that my gesso did not either dry completely or hit that spot of the paper. But it's okay because it'll be colored and covered and it won't make a difference in the long run. Then after you have a fairly wet page, working from the top corner down or the bottom corner, whichever edge of the paper you're working with, you're going to make it darkest near the edges and fade the color and pigment out toward the middle where you want to start blending the other color. You'll always want to keep it light and add color as you go. The more layers you add, the darker it will become, and it's always easier to add color than it is to take away. So blend your first color out to all the edges as smoothly as possible. This type of blending with 2 colors often takes a lot of patience and effort, so just keep working with the pigment until you have it the way you want it. As you start with the second, darker color, starting on the opposite side of the blend that you intend, you'll start adding the darker color again, starting light and working your way to the darker color pigment. As you start to blend the 2 colors together, you'll notice that the blend isn't perfect right away, and that's okay. Just keep working with the color until you have it the way you want it. If there is any space around the area of the darker color and it's not butted up against the edge of a paper, you'll also want to blend that out into nothing so that it has a very natural ombre washed out look that you're going for. Go ahead and keep blending, adding color and mixing the 2 colors together until you're happy with the result. You'll also want to remember with all of these blending methods that it's just a background and it's okay to be imperfect. Anything you add on top of it, whether it's hand lettering or stickers or tip-ins or your own art on top of it, all of that is going to draw the eye to the actual art, and the watercolor background, with all its imperfections, will become unimportant. So just do your best and keep blending until you're ready. Here I'm going to come back with more of the pink pigment because the middle section's gotten a little bit washed out with all of the blending. I'm going to have to be careful here because the pink and the green are not complementary colors. They're opposing colors and they're going to mix to make more of a brown, dirty color that I'm not going for. So again, I'm just going to keep adding pigment and working with it until I like the way it turns out. If you want a pro tip, especially if this is your first time making a watercolor blend, choose colors that are in the same color family. Not necessarily the same color like red and pink, but not opposing colors either. In theory, this can work with any 2 colors or more colors if you're feeling up to it, but I do recommend colors that go better together and are not opposite colors, at least for your first try. Now, if you start to see brush marks, like I have here, you're going to want to go back with a softer brush that's just slightly damp and try to work out those brush marks. Again, it's not going to be perfect, but this will help you blend just lightly to make sure that it doesn't have that painted look and it looks more like the watercolored wash that you're going for. Here I'm blending all the way down to the bottom of the page to give it the lightest, softest look that I can. I'll also come back with the soft brush and blend in the opposite direction the brush strokes at the sides so that it just blends into the paper without pulling too much of the pigment into the words of the Bible. The second watercolor background method that I'm going to be showing you is what I call the Smush-blend method. This method is far less perfect and it gives a very fun feel to the background. What I'm using here is a picture frame glass that I just got at the local dollar store, and took the glass out of. You can also use a piece of plastic or anything that is non-absorbent. And I'm putting thick, heavy puddles of pigment down all over the glass. Next, I'm going to choose a color that is more complementary than the green, just because I want the blend to be a more happier look for this entry. Colors in the same family are probably going to work better for you in this particular method anyway. The imperfection in this particular method really makes the look. So go ahead and flip the piece of glass or plastic, whatever you're using, over and smush the pigment down across the page, working in all corners to make the colors blend as best as you can. As you lift the glass up, you'll notice that all the pigments run together. This is the beauty of this particular method because it really does have an interesting little look to it. The third method for creating a watercolor background is what I'm going to call the wet blend method. So go ahead and put water all over the section of the page that you are desiring to work with. Here, I'm excited to show you how this can effectively cover the shadowing from another entry behind your page. So I've applied water all over my page, as you can see here. Then working with the pigment, this time I'm going to use the green emerald and another blue watercolor. I'm just going to put dots of heavy pigment all over the space that's wet. The color's going to move around the page, going with the flow of the water and the angle of the page. You can really make this work for you, but don't let it overwhelm you. If you end up with too much water, take a dry brush and pull up some of the water so that it's manageable for you. You'll start to see the colors really blend together as you add the second color, and this will be a art of trial and error, if you wanted to call it that, because it is going to flow around. You can physically pick up your page and tilt it to one side or the other to start mixing the pigments, but don't do it too much because it will start to just blend and make a different color, which is not what you want. You want the watercolored look that this will give you. You can go back with a slightly damp brush to fill in the areas that don't have enough pigment with a dabbing like brush stroke to just move the pigment around a little bit. If the puddles ever get too wet, you can always come back with a little bit of a drier brush and pick up some of the water so that it dries well. You can also add more pigment if you feel like you'd like that. So it's really how you feel and just an imperfect way to work with watercolors that will create an interesting background. You can tell here that the heavy shadowing coming through from the other side was not fully covered, but because we've created such a bright watercolor background, I've included a picture of what it looks like once I've added the rest of the entry. I really hope you've enjoyed these 3 methods to creating a watercolor background. Follow this channel for more tutorials on Bible journaling and watercolor, and I look forward to seeing you in the future.